Every year, over 1 billion cans of ravioli are consumed in the United States, turning a simple pasta dish into a quiet cornerstone of the convenience food industry for nearly a century. So what has allowed ravioli to retain its distinctive flavor and become a familiar choice for millions of families? This journey begins in the fields of raw ingredients, where tomatoes are harvested at peak ripeness to preserve their natural sweetness. Wheat meets strict standards for a smooth and chewy pasta, and beef is carefully selected to create a rich filling. From there, the ravioli are continuously formed, with the beef filling encased in thinly rolled pasta, blended with a rich tomato sauce that is thoroughly cooked and poured in during the finishing stage, producing the familiar cans of ravioli enjoyed across generations. Today, let's join Agriculture Insight in taking a closer look at the production system behind ravioli, quietly shaping a timeless convenience icon and contributing to the history of American cuisine. Few people know that Chef Boyardee ravioli was born as a pivotal twist that helped spaghetti enter industrial-scale production. As urban populations surged, the pressure to feed sprawling metropolises increased, and the demand for durable, transportable food that still maintained quality became a standard from the 20th century onward. But unlike any traditional long spaghetti, Chef Boyardee conquered the mass market while taking a distinct approach. Using square pillow-shaped ravioli allowed the soft pasta to fully encase the meat and sauce, making each portion compact enough to fit in a can and easy to eat directly with just a spoon. To this day, billions of cans of Chef Boyardee are produced each year, carrying the smiling face of auteur Hector Boyardee, who personally oversaw the recipes and production process for nearly 20 years before passing the brand to American home foods. This journey began with a simple observation at his restaurant. The number of customers buying sauce to take home far exceeded those dining in, revealing a demand for flexible eating beyond the traditional dining table. And now, let's step into one of the most crucial starting points: the vast tomato fields stretching over hundreds of thousands of hectares, the indispensable foundation of every red sauce spaghetti. In Pennsylvania, the land Chef Boyardee chose for his sauce, the warm summers, long days, and marked day-night temperature swings create ideal conditions for tomatoes to accumulate high dry matter, retain a stable red color, and develop a rich flavor when concentrated into sauce. Starting in August, when the tomatoes ripen all at once, the entire field enters a massive harvesting cycle. Self-propelled harvesters move across the rows, with cutting blades set about 4 centimeters below the surface to collect entire tomato beds while preserving the topsoil. Immediately after cutting, vibrating conveyors lift the plants, fruit, and soil onto the machine. Vibrations at a fixed frequency cause the ripe tomatoes to detach naturally from their stems, while soil and biomass fall back to the field, returning organic matter and maintaining ground cover. The tomatoes are then continuously guided onto an elevating conveyor and dumped into trailing bins, all while the machine maintains a steady forward speed. Under flat field conditions, uniform ripeness, and dry weather, each machine can harvest up to 80 tons per hour, producing a consistent and abundant supply, transforming the tomatoes into the key foundation for the thick, durable, and uniform sauce in every can of Chef Boyardee ravioli. Beyond tomatoes, the pasta layer made from wheat forms the essential foundation that shapes the very first bite of every ravioli. It all begins with the autumn harvest in the Midwest, which produces over 400 million tons of hard red winter wheat annually, Chef Boyardee's primary source for creating pasta that's both firm and pliable enough to cradle the filling and sauce perfectly. Once the kernels have fully accumulated starch and protein, reaching the right hardness for industrial milling, they are harvested using 500 horsepower combine harvesters on large-scale fields. The cutter head feeds the entire wheat stalk into the machine, where an auger moves the biomass into the threshing chamber. Here, the threshing drum separates the grain from the chaff with carefully controlled force to minimize breakage. Lightweight straw and husks are returned to the fields, while the heavier kernels are funneled directly into the storage compartment. When the bin reaches capacity, the discharge spout swivels toward a parallel transport vehicle, allowing the grain to be dumped directly without interrupting the harvesting rhythm. From these fully loaded bins, the wheat is then sent to silos and milling plants across the Midwest, producing around 50 million tons of wheat annually in the U.S., creating a stable supply that supports the continuous production of millions of cans of Chef Boyardee ravioli. And now, we arrive at the Angus cattle farms, the starting point for the rich filling, the element that defines the sense of fullness from the very first bite. In the early stages of life, calves stay with their mothers on natural pastures, grazing on tender, easily digestible grass to develop a stable digestive system and a strong skeletal frame, laying the foundation for steady growth later on. When separated from their mothers, the herd moves into a semi-free-range system. Their main diet consists of dry hay, alfalfa, and trace minerals, which keeps the rumen functioning smoothly, stabilizes fermentation, minimizes metabolic fluctuations, and promotes fine muscle fiber development. During the finishing stage, as muscle growth slows to allow energy accumulation before slaughter, Angus cattle are supplemented with grains such as corn, barley, and soy, conditions that promote the signature marbling, helping the meat retain moisture and remain stable when ground. On average, a full growth cycle lasts about 18 months, with cattle reaching 550 to 650 kilograms, an optimal weight for both steaks and industrially ground meat. It's this consistency throughout the entire process that makes Angus the core choice for Chef Boyardee, the foundation for meat batches that withstand high heat cooking and pressure sterilization while keeping full flavor, distinct grain, and that genuine, satisfying texture even in a canned product. Leaving the fields, all the main ingredients officially enter the factory. Before the tomatoes oxidize, darken, and lose structure, the wheat absorbs moisture, reducing dough elasticity, or the meat begins to lose water and undergo protein changes, throwing the entire batch off its technical specifications. Within just 6 hours of harvest, all the tomatoes are brought directly to the factory's receiving area, passing through an automated sorting system to remove unripe, damaged, or contaminated fruit. The tomatoes are then high-pressure washed, coarsely crushed, and rapidly heated to deactivate enzymes, lock in their natural red color, and stabilize dry matter content, creating a uniform input for the sauce cooking process. The Chef Boyardee ravioli process begins in an industrial steel kettle with a capacity of about 1,500 gallons, where water, sugar, and concentrated tomatoes are heated and continuously stirred to create a uniform sauce base. Once the mixture reaches a steady, gentle simmer, basil, rosemary, paprika, and a proprietary blend of seasonings are added. Over the course of roughly 60 minutes, mechanical paddles maintain constant motion to control consistency, color, and aroma, standardizing the sauce base before it moves on to the next stage. In parallel with the sauce, freshly ground beef is received daily and transferred into large heated mixing kettles, combined with chopped carrots, dried onions, garlic, and seasonings. The heating process, accompanied by continuous stirring, ensures the meat breaks apart evenly, releases its natural juices, and absorbs the spices, producing a filling with controlled texture and moisture, ready for the forming stage. Meanwhile, in the pasta section, semolina is fed directly from the silos into heavy-duty cross-arm mixers, where water is added in precise proportions. During mixing, gluten develops, forming the structural framework for the pasta. After about 10 minutes, the dough is transferred to a vacuum mixing chamber to remove excess air, stabilize the structure, and minimize surface defects in the cans. Kneading continues until the dough reaches the desired consistency and elasticity. The finished dough is pressed into blocks and passed through a multi-roller sheeting system to create thin sheets of uniform thickness. At the ravioli forming machine, the beef filling is deposited from above, while 2 sheets of dough advance from opposite directions. A pair of molding rollers simultaneously press, cut, and seal, producing hundreds of square ravioli in a continuous cycle, ensuring consistent sealing and size. The ravioli strips then enter a blanching machine, where hot water quickly cooks the pasta and separates each piece. Immediately afterward, the product is transferred into a deep cold water bath for a shock cooling step. This helps set the shape and enhances mechanical strength before canning. Immediately afterward, the cooled ravioli enter a rotary portioning machine. As the table rotates, the product is evenly distributed and guided into dosing chambers, with approximately 14 pieces dropping precisely into each can before the conveyor moves them onward to the sauce filling stage. Open cans pass beneath the filling system, where hot tomato sauce is pumped directly from holding tanks at rates approaching 600 cans per minute. Once the standard fill level is reached, the cans are rapidly sealed at high speed, locking in structure before thermal processing. To ensure complete coverage, the cans pass through a continuous inversion and rotation system, undergoing more than 10 flipping cycles. This motion allows the sauce to flow into every gap and fully coat all pasta surfaces. The cans are then fed into a rotary pressure retort. Within this controlled pressurized environment, temperatures reach approximately 250 degrees Fahrenheit and are maintained for about 45 minutes. The combination of heat and continuous rotation completes the final cooking stage, while ensuring safe sterilization for long-term shelf stability. After exiting the retort, the cans are rapidly cooled on conveyor lines before moving into the labeling area, where they receive the iconic image of Chef Boyardee. At the end of the process, products are case-packed by batch and distributed to supermarket and convenience store networks across the United States. From this solid foundation, Chef Boyardee has expanded far beyond ravioli, creating mass-market hits such as beefaroni, spaghetti and meatballs, and lasagna, with total annual production sustained at over 300 million units. While formats and flavors may vary, they all operate around one clear philosophy: delivering a fast, filling, stable meal that's easy to rely on again and again. Deer antlers are the fastest-growing bone structure on Earth, even faster than the metastasis rate of human cancer cells. Each day, an antler can lengthen by about 2 centimeters, and within just 3 months, its weight can exceed 20 kilograms. Antler growth only begins when maternal growth hormones activate the cells at the base of the frontal bone, initiating the formation of the antler shaft. The harvesting process starts with sedation to maintain physiological stability and prevent stress responses. The antler is removed at the pedicle, the point where connective tissue and bone are clearly separated, minimizing pain. Immediately after cutting, the pedicle is disinfected and covered with a biological seal to stop bleeding, control microorganisms, and stabilize the tissue. Under optimal conditions, a mature deer can yield up to 4 harvests per year. At the processing facility, cleaned velvet antlers undergo thermal treatment to stabilize the tissue and deactivate enzymes. They are then immersed in a specialized biological solution, the key step that preserves protein structures and protects the natural compounds. Once stabilized, the antlers are sliced and dried to reduce moisture, maintain structural integrity, and extend shelf life for several months. Interestingly, New Zealand remains the only country that legally permits large-scale deer farming for industrial antler production. Most antler products used in collagen, nutraceuticals, and regenerative pharmaceuticals in the US, South Korea, and Europe originate from here. Dubbed the Wagyu of the pork world, Jamon Iberico is a rare convergence of genetics, terroir, ecosystem, and time, a true Mediterranean masterpiece. Its journey begins in the Dehesa grasslands of southwestern Spain, where millions of holm and cork oak trees grow naturally spaced across thousands of hectares. Here, Iberico black pigs roam freely, walking tens of kilometers each day to forage for acorns, rich in oleic acid comparable to olive oil, which permeate the meat and form the unique intramuscular fat structure found in no other pig breed. When the Montanera season ends, the hind legs, where intramuscular fat density and muscle fiber architecture are most ideal, enter a transformation lasting more than 900 days. In the first stage, they are coated with pure sea salt at a precise ratio of 30 grams per kilogram of meat, just enough to inhibit harmful bacteria while allowing enzymatic activity to continue. Over 2 weeks at low temperatures, the salt slowly penetrates the meat, reducing moisture and activating natural biochemical reactions. Next, the jamon is moved into traditional curing chambers. No climate control, no humidifiers, relying solely on cold winds, ambient humidity, and native microorganisms. These conditions allow penicillium molds and local microflora to flourish, forming a natural biological rind that both protects the meat and begins unlocking its signature clean, buttery richness. Over the next 2 to 4 years, fats and proteins break down, generating more than 120 aromatic compounds, from chestnut, caramel, and dairy notes to aged oak wood and fermented cheese undertones. This is no mere salted pork. It is a living biochemical transformation, where time, geography, and native microbiology co-create a flavor profile that modern industry simply cannot replicate. These tiny bees, weighing less than 0.1 grams, collectively produce over 1.9 million tons of honey each year for the global food industry. Beekeepers use gentle smoke to interrupt the bees' defensive pheromone signals, reducing their aggression and guiding them away from the comb surface. Once the hive has coined, each honey-filled frame is removed and taken to the processing area. Here, the wax cappings that seal every hexagonal cell are cut away using a heated knife or an automatic uncapping machine. The frames are then placed into an industrial centrifuge. As the drum spins at speeds of up to 400 RPM, centrifugal force pulls the honey out of the wax structure while preserving its enzymes, micronutrients, pollen, and natural microbiome, the true essence of raw honey. The extracted honey then passes through a multi-stage coarse filtration system, where ultra-fine screens remove wax fragments, mechanical impurities, and small bee particles. Notably, the honey is never heated, allowing its enzyme structure and biological activity to remain almost fully intact. And here's a fun fact. When paired with pancakes, honey enhances perceived sweetness by up to 1.7 times, yet adds only about 21 calories per teaspoon. That's why chefs often call honey a natural flavor carrier, a catalyst that makes the notes of butter, pastry or cheese sharper and deeper than refined sugar or artificial syrups ever could. Deep within the damp, shadowed cliffs of Southeast Asia, swiftlets cling upside down to the cave ceiling, secreting a unique glycoprotein that forms an exceptionally adhesive material, strong enough for their delicate nests to withstand forces up to 30 times their own weight. When the nest completes its natural cycle, typically after 3 months, once the fledglings have left, it is harvested carefully to avoid disrupting the bird's breeding rhythm. Workers detach each nest from the rock surface using only their bare hands, requiring steady control and absolute precision. Most natural birds' nests are incredibly fragile and can crumble with even the slightest touch, turning the harvesting process into a true craft. Inside the processing facility, raw nests, still mixed with feathers, dust, and wood fibers, are softened with clean water and moved to the picking stations. Here, every impurity is removed with tweezers to preserve the original structure of the nest and eliminate all biological contaminants. The crucial qualities that determine purity and texture are then maintained through meticulous shaping, drying, and sterilization under tightly controlled conditions. This refined process is what brings edible bird's nest to Beverly Hills, one of America's most luxurious markets, placing it among the world's most expensive foods, with prices exceeding USD $3,000 per kilogram. In many premium boutiques, high-grade nests even cost 3 times more than saffron or truffles. Modern merino sheep can no longer shed their wool naturally, and without regular shearing, their fleece can swell to 25 kilograms, causing overheating, infections, and severe exhaustion. Shearing, therefore, is not just harvesting. It is essential for the animal's well-being. The wool harvest takes place once a year, typically in early spring. Professional shearers use electric shearing machines with blades curved to match the sheep's body. A skilled shearer can remove the fleece of a sheep in under 2 minutes, keeping the entire coat intact, a single continuous piece known as the fleece. Every movement must be precise. Even one deep cut can downgrade the wool to industrial-grade fiber and wipe out over 60% of its value. After shearing, the fleece is braided based on its position on the body. Wool from the back and sides, the cleanest, finest, and most uniform fibers, is classified as highest-grade apparel wool, destined for Italian suits or ultra-light knitwear. Wool from the belly, legs, and rear, often mixed with lanolin, sweat, and soil, is better suited for carpets, insulation, or acoustic materials. A premium merino fleece may sell for less than USD $60, but once spun, woven, and finished, its value can exceed USD $300 for a sweater, or USD $2,000 for a tailored suit. This is why merino wool is considered one of the highest margin materials in the global textile. Among more than 300 cattle breeds worldwide, the intramuscular fat-building process of Wagyu demands stricter biological conditions than any other. This mechanism is precisely what makes Wagyu so expensive. Even a slight rise in cortisol levels can halt fat deposition within the muscle fibers, disrupting the entire marbling cycle and sharply reducing its commercial value. Inside the processing plant, Wagyu is handled under a dedicated protocol designed to preserve marbling quality, with temperature and humidity tightly controlled at every stage, from slaughter to final packaging. The entire workflow must occur at consistently low temperatures to maintain the spiraled fat structure, a unique form of intramuscular fat embedded deep within each fiber rather than sitting as an outer layer. Each cut is inspected and graded based on 3 key metrics: marbling density, firmness, and meltability. As a result, only batches that meet A4 or A5 standards qualify for freezing, chilled cutting, and export, often commanding prices that reach USD $450 per kilogram, placing Wagyu on the same tier as bluefin tuna and beluga caviar. In China, where millions of quail eggs are produced each day for the global market, every stage of harvesting and processing is carried out under strict control to minimize losses. Because the shell is as thin as a sheet of paper, just enough to protect the embryo, yet prone to cracking under even slight force, collection must be done entirely by hand to preserve each egg's shape. Only eggs that pass initial inspection are sent to multi-stage washing lines, first through low-pressure misting to remove dust and surface debris, followed by ultrasonic sanitation tanks that eliminate microbes without eroding the shell. Those that meet the standards move on to the peeling system, where specialized rollers and separating blades operate at under 5 newtons of pressure, enough to list the membrane without damaging the delicate albumin. This method yields a high rate of intact eggs, ideal for canning and ready-to-eat food production. A portion of the output is processed into century-style quail eggs, a higher-value product. Here, the eggs are cured in a mixture of alkaline salts, black tea, salt and plant ash for 14 to 21 days, causing the proteins to coagulate slowly. The yolk turns into a dense amber gel, while the white becomes translucent like jelly. The eggs are then rinsed, stabilized, and packaged under microbiological standards, becoming a strong selling item across Asia and increasingly popular in Europe and the Americas, as demand for East Asian cuisine grows. A single gallon of Italian buffalo milk can become a cheese, far more valuable than anything made from cow's milk. Buffalo milk contains twice the fat and roughly 30% more protein than cow's milk, creating a cheese that is denser, glossier, and distinctly moist, a texture cow's milk mozzarella can rarely replicate. Inside stainless steel fermentation vats, rennet and lactic cultures begin transforming proteins into curds, slowly separating them from the whey. Immediately after, the automated cutting system determines the cheese's destiny. Finely cut curds yield a firmer product with lower moisture, ideal for long-distance export. Larger curds create a softer, richer cheese destined for Neapolitan pizza, famed for its supple, creamy stretch. But the defining moment comes when the curd is plunged into near-boiling water for stretching. The proteins unwind and realign into glossy elastic sheets, forming strands that can stretch up to 30 inches without breaking. Each year, from the fields of Campania, roughly 50,000 tons of mozzarella di bufala are produced, a true money-making engine that generates over $800 million annually for this fertile region. Born in 1964, from the idea of reusing leftover tortillas at a restaurant in Disneyland, Doritos quickly became a global icon of corn-based snacks, made from an ingredient more associated with Mexican cuisine than the food industry. With over $4 billion in annual revenue, Doritos is the best-selling corn snack in the world, available in more than 70 countries. In the US alone, it holds nearly 20% of the savory snack market. Second to Lay's in volume, yet leading in bold flavor and strong personality. Unlike light and airy potato chips, Doritos are crispy and dense, coated in charred cheese flavor with a hint of smoky roasted corn, delivering a heavy hit of taste from the very first bite. However, just half a bag of Doritos contains nearly 40% of the recommended daily sodium intake, about 3 times that of a regular serving of potato chips. Doritos has not only shaped global snacking trends, but also revealed the fine line between health and our dependence on flavor. So, how many bags of Doritos could you eat in a year? Before becoming the crispy golden chips inside every bag of Doritos, each corn plant goes through more than 4 months of meticulous care, from the moment the seeds are sown until the ears fully mature. Then, as autumn arrives, vast cornfields stretching for hundreds of hectares awaken to the thunderous roar of giant combine harvesters working tirelessly day and night. These machines are truly the heart of modern harvest season. Equipped with ultra-sharp stainless steel blades, they can automatically adjust their cutting height according to the terrain and plant size, ensuring precise cuts at the ears without damaging the stalks or losing kernels. Once cut, the corn ears are drawn into a sealed processing chamber, where gears, air blowers, and vibrating sieves work in perfect harmony to remove husks, silks, and stems, leaving each ear in its optimal condition. Immediately after harvesting, the corn is unloaded directly onto specialized trucks and transported to the factory in the shortest possible time. Thanks to modern technology, each harvester can process up to 140 tons of corn per day, drastically shortening the harvest period while preserving the freshness, sweetness, and natural starch content of every kernel. These qualities form the foundation of the smooth, elastic masa dough that gives Doritos their signature golden crunch. After leaving the fields, trucks loaded with golden corn ears line up and head toward the factory. Each massive truck bed is tilted to pour the corn onto outdoor conveyor systems, where thousands of tons of raw material begin their next journey. The entire area operates like one giant machine, bulldozers, conveyors, and air blowers working non-stop to evenly distribute the corn and keep the flow of material smooth and uninterrupted. From here, the corn is sent into the processing zone, ready for the next magical transformation, from raw kernels into soft, elastic masa dough, the very foundation of the legendary Doritos snack. As the corn travels along the conveyor belt, its first journey inside the factory officially begins. Each ear of corn passes through a high-speed husking system, where rough-surfaced rollers spin thousands of times per minute. Within seconds, the dry husks and silks are completely removed, without scratching or cracking a single kernel. Immediately after, the corn enters the kernel separation chamber, one of the most crucial stages of the process. Inside, 6 ultra-sharp steel blades operate in perfect synchronization at high speed, slicing the kernels off the cob with such precision that almost none are lost. Smart sensors automatically adjust the spacing between the blades, ensuring flawless performance regardless of the size of each ear. This production line can handle up to 6,000 ears per hour, creating a mechanical rhythm that's both powerful and precise. Right after the kernels are separated, streams of golden corn are directed straight into the cleaning system. Here, the kernels pass through a series of vibrating sieves, where controlled airflows and rhythmic shaking work together to remove dust, small stones, and fine sand. Then, they are thoroughly washed in high-pressure swirling water tanks, leaving each kernel gleaming and pristine as if freshly awakened. Next, the corn enters a specialized rotating drum that peels off the outer layer while removing any kernels that are too small, too large, or broken. This step ensures even cooking and lays the foundation for producing high-quality masa dough. Once cleaned and meeting quality standards, the corn is directed straight to the cooking area, where the real transformation begins. Giant mixing kettles cook the corn at around 190 degrees Fahrenheit, 88 degrees Celsius, for about 4 minutes, with a ratio of 660 pounds of corn to 20 pounds of water in each batch. This softens the kernels and breaks down their internal structure. The cooked corn is then transferred to 18 open soaking tanks, where it continues to absorb water for several hours until reaching the ideal moisture level. After soaking, the softened outer skins float to the surface and are removed, leaving only the pure kernels. The corn stream is then directed into an automated washing system, where high-pressure water jets and swirling tanks continuously clean and flush away any remaining husks or impurities. What's left are moist, smooth, and gleaming kernels, perfectly prepared for the grinding stage, where they will be transformed into a uniform, refined masa dough. The corn then enters the grinding stage, where it's crushed between two rotating alumina stones. At this point, about 20% white corn is often added to improve cohesion and create a smoother texture. Here, three key parameters are strictly monitored: temperature, moisture, and fineness of the dough. Even a deviation of just 1% in any of these factors can ruin the massa's life, its elasticity, and its ability to form that perfect crisp and airy texture after frying. From this masa, every Doritos chip is born with the same DNA, a perfectly balanced dough formula that Frito-Lay has kept secret for decades. Continuing down the production line, the perfectly prepared masa is pressed through metal rollers to form thin sheets, which then pass through a triangular cutter, capable of slicing up to 6,000 pieces per minute or more than 8 million chips per day. Immediately after, the small dough pieces are baked in a 3-tier high-temperature oven for 16 seconds. Just enough time to dry the surface while keeping the core slightly moist, ensuring the chips remain flexible yet structurally intact. This process is what creates the tiny air bubbles on the surface of Doritos, the hallmark of that perfectly crisp signature texture fans love. To achieve the perfect crispness without burning, the cut chips are fried precisely for 55 seconds. During this time, the air bubbles expand one last time, creating that light, airy, and irresistibly crunchy texture. As soon as they emerge from the oil, the chips are drained of any excess oil and prepared for the seasoning stage, where the true soul of Doritos awakens, giving them their unmistakable flavor that sets them apart from every other snack out there. Before seasoning, Doritos chips are lightly sprayed with canola oil to help the coating stick, then sent into a massive rotating drum, where cheddar, parmesan, and a blend of spices are evenly dusted over each chip as they tumble gently against one another without breaking. In that moment, the rich, creamy cheese blends perfectly with the corn's natural sweetness, creating the bold, crispy, and irresistibly addictive flavor that defines Doritos. From this iconic base, the brand has expanded to more than 20 different flavors, from fiery barbecue to versions inspired by Mexican street food, transforming Doritos into a global symbol of creativity and bold taste. And after all those transformations, the Doritos journey inside the factory comes to an end on the cooling conveyor, where a burst of cold air quickly locks out moisture to seal in that signature crunch. At the packaging area, fully automated 14-head weighers ensure each bag reaches the exact target weight, with smaller bags holding around 28 to 30 chips and larger ones about 140. Before being sealed, nitrogen gas is pumped into every bag, not only to remove oxygen and keep the chips crisp for longer, but also to create a cushion of air that protects each piece from breaking during transport. More than 5 million tons of cocoa sustain the billion-dollar chocolate industry, mostly from West Africa, especially Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. Yet almost all of it is still harvested by hand, because with rugged terrain, fragmented smallholder farms, and the delicate structure of cocoa trees, whose pods grow tightly against the trunk, mechanization remains limited. By September each year, cocoa plantations enter peak harvest season. Ripe pods are usually yellow, orange, or red, but green ones can still be cut because each variety ripens in a different color. To harvest, farmers use long, curved machetes, traditional tools that have existed for hundreds of years, and with a single precise cut, they can remove the pod without damaging the tree. In addition, specialized pruning shears are also used to handle pods that are lower and easier to reach. Meanwhile, for pods high above or hidden deep in the canopy, Long poles fitted with curved blades at the tip are the perfect choice for cutting without climbing the tree. Freshly cut pods are gathered for the legendary step, bean extraction. Splitting a cocoa pod requires a sharp knife and just enough force to avoid crushing the beans. Inside, the seeds wrapped in tangy white pulp are scooped out by hand. A skilled worker can handle 150 to 200 pods per hour. That may sound low, but beginners often achieve only half of that, meaning an income of about $1 per day can be further split apart simply due to slower hands. The beans are then transported to processing sites. In some regions with muddy terrain and poor roads, donkeys are still used today as reliable means of transport. Crude and slow as it is, this land of scarce resources but abundant low-cost labor remains the backbone that supplies up to 70% of the cocoa for the global chocolate industry. And clearly, the journey of the calloused hands that sweeten the world is nowhere near as sweet as the final product they create. Cocoa beans, once they leave the plantation, cannot be used immediately and must undergo a fermentation process lasting 5 to 7 days, a step that determines 60 to 80% of the final chocolate flavor. Traditionally, the beans are fermented in layers of banana leaves, where heat and natural microorganisms trigger the breakdown of the mucilage, kill the embryo, and develop precursor aromas. Today, most cocoa is fermented in multi-tier wooden boxes that allow even turning and better temperature control. The ideal temperature throughout fermentation must stay between 40 to 50 degrees Celsius, with the bean mass kept aerated and not overly moist to avoid anaerobic fermentation. Crucially, the beans are turned once a day from the second or third day onward, a vital step to distribute heat and oxygen. Just one mistake, such as delayed turning or excess water, can leave an entire batch overly acidic, off-flavored, and severely downgraded. This is an irreplaceable link in the journey that transforms raw, sharp-tasting, fruit-scented cacao into premium chocolate. After 5 to 7 days of fermentation, when the beans have turned dark brown and release a characteristic cocoa aroma, the wet beans are brought out to dry under the sun for up to 7 days. This is a crucial step that reduces moisture from over 60% to around 7%, meeting storage and export standards. Farmers usually dry the beans directly on concrete yards or bamboo mats. In some areas, raised drying racks with roofs are used to avoid sudden rain. This stage also demands precision. The beans must receive enough sunlight each day, be stirred constantly to dry evenly, and kept free from moisture or mold. Just one damp spot can ruin an entire batch of cocoa. Once the cocoa beans reach the proper dryness level, they are sorted to remove impurities, flat beans, and low-quality fragments before being bagged and stored. After receiving confirmation from buyers or collectors, the entire batch is transported to the export port, ready to set off abroad, heading toward a dazzling world of precision machinery and polished production lines, the chocolate factory. Now, let's step into the most anticipated part, the chocolate production paradise of the world's most developed countries, where modern production lines dominate this billion-dollar industry. At the factory, cocoa beans, once received, must undergo a quality inspection before officially entering the chocolate-making process. A step that seems simple, yet is absolutely non-negotiable. After passing inspection, the qualified batches are sent straight to the cleaning area. Workers slice open the bags, pour the beans into the feeding hopper, and send each cocoa bean one step closer to its mission of becoming chocolate. And when everything is finally in place, the most crucial step to unlock the cocoa's true flavor begins: roasting. At bean-to-bar facilities or small-scale workshops, The most common choice is paddle-style roasters. Inside is a semi-closed roasting chamber where rotating paddles constantly toss the beans to ensure even heat exposure. This type of machine allows direct observation of the bean's color, aroma, and sound throughout the roast, while offering flexible temperature control from 100 to 140 degrees Celsius, adjusted in small increments with just a few buttons. The paddle speed can also be fine-tuned to suit different roasting styles, a major advantage for small batches requiring precise manual adjustments. In industrial factories, drum roasters with capacities of hundreds of kilos per batch are the optimal choice. After the beans are roasted, they move on to the next step, separating the shells to obtain the cocoa nibs. Large capacity winnowing machines can process hundreds of kilos of beans per hour, operating on the principle of cracking the beans and then using strong air currents to blow away the lighter shells while retaining the heavier nibs. A multi-stage sieving system further sorts the nibs by size, ensuring that only those meeting the required standards move on to the next stage. The next step takes the freshly separated nibs into the grinding system to create cacao mass, the foundation of the entire chocolate industry. First, the nibs are coarse ground using roller crushers to break down their structure and release the natural cocoa butter, gradually turning the mixture from solid particles into a thick paste. The mixture then moves into ball mills or granite stone grinders for deeper refinement, reducing particle size to just 15 to 30 microns. Heat generated from friction melts the cocoa butter, transforming the mass into a smooth, homogeneous cocoa liquor, the core ingredient that determines the silkiness, richness, and flavor profile of the final chocolate. A portion of the cacao mass is fed into a massive hydraulic press to separate the cocoa butter. Under tons of pressure, the melted cocoa butter flows out in a steady stream, while the dry cocoa cake is pushed aside to be ground into powder. A fun fact: chocolate melts in your mouth, but not in your hand, and cocoa butter is the secret behind that. The dry cocoa cake is then fed into a specialized grinding system to produce cocoa powder. High-speed grinders break the solid cake into fine particles, resulting in a light, fluffy cocoa powder with a rich aroma, an essential ingredient in confectionery, beverages, and chocolate production. And once all the core ingredients, cocoa mass, sugar, and cocoa butter, are ready, they are poured into an industrial mixer for blending, the opening step that defines the structure and flavor of the chocolate. First, the cocoa mass is stirred and warmed. Then, sugar and cocoa butter are added in sequence, transforming the mixture from loose, dry particles into a thick, cohesive crumb. The mixer continues to knead and compress the blend so that sugar particles become evenly coated with fat, forming a uniform pre-chocolate base. Once it reaches the proper consistency, the mixture moves directly into the conching stage, where chocolate is refined, aerated, and polished to perfection. Conching, the most critical refinement step in chocolate making. In this stage, the chocolate mixture is continuously agitated, ground, and aerated in conch machines for anywhere from a few hours to over 72 hours, depending on the desired quality. Heat and friction drive off acidic notes, smooth out harsh flavors, and allow cocoa butter to fully coat every solid particle, creating a silky texture. The process also deepens aroma development through oxidation and the release of complex flavor compounds. The result: chocolate with its signature smoothness, shine, and refined, well-rounded flavor. When the conching process is complete, the liquid chocolate is kept warm in controlled holding tanks to maintain a stable viscosity before moving into the molding stage, the final shaping step that determines the product's appearance. In modern factories, the molding process is almost fully automated. A conveyor system carries clean polycarbonate molds through a vibrating unit, after which liquid chocolate is precisely deposited into each cavity by dosing nozzles. Immediately after filling, the molds pass through a high-frequency vibrating table to remove air bubbles and ensure the chocolate spreads evenly, preventing surface holes or cracks in the finished product. Next, The molds enter a cooling tunnel set to a precise temperature range, allowing the chocolate to solidify and contract slightly for easy demolding. Once properly cooled, the molds are inverted and gently tapped by a mechanical system so the bars or pieces of chocolate fall onto the conveyor. From here, robotic arms or automated belts transfer the pieces through inspection, wrapping, packaging, and boxing. Every step runs seamlessly, cleanly, and accurately, completing the long journey from raw cacao to glossy, finished chocolate ready for the shelf.